On World News tonight, a series of explosions in Saudi Arabia. It appears that Westerners were the target. A giant dress rehearsal for a terrorist attack. Many cities in the country are not prepared. 2 more senior Iraqi officials are now in U.S. custody. What do they know about weapons of mass destruction? Cities in crisis. The country's second largest city broke and cutting to the bone. And the ultimate camouflage. What has 8 arms and looks like a rock?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with violence directed against foreigners in Saudi Arabia. It was late in the evening when the attacks took place on what we believe were 3 housing compounds where foreigners, perhaps including Americans, live in Riyadh. U.S. and Saudi officials have been very worried for more than a week that terrorists who may be connected to al-Qaeda were making their final preparations for some sort of attack. We're going to go first to ABC's John McWethy at the Pentagon. John, I know it's early and we don't know a great deal, but what does the U.S. government think it does know?
What they do know, Peter, is that, or they presume, it was a terrorist attack. They also believe that there are distinct ties to al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden's organization. They believe it is al-Qaeda for several reasons. One, it was apparently a coordinated attack with the 3 explosions going off nearly simultaneously. And also they had a great deal of intelligence indicating that something was up, but they did not know when or where.
Do we have any hard evidence that in these 3 locations that Americans actually live?
The implications are at this point, Peter, that yes, there were Americans living in these areas. It is absolutely unclear at this point whether there have been any American casualties, but clearly there have been some casualties at the site, not necessarily American.
Okay, thanks very much, John. John McWethy of the Pentagon. By the way, the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, on his way, due to be there in Saudi Arabia tomorrow. And now we're going to go to terrorism here at home. If you happen to just glance at a television set sometime today and there were pictures from Seattle such as these, you would have been justified in thinking that the city was under attack. It was actually a staged event, though a very realistic looking one, to mark the beginning of an operation to test the country's readiness for a real event. This operation in Seattle, involving a radioactive bomb, a car bomb in Tacoma, Washington, and a biological attack also simulated in Chicago, involves 8,500 officials from 100 different federal, state, and local agencies. It's a big test, and ABC's Neil Karlinski begins our reporting from Seattle.
Peter, this drill has been in the works for nearly 2 years now. It was designed to test just how prepared cities like Seattle really are. It was noon on a sunny Seattle day. The simulated attack leaves several city blocks of mangled buildings, city buses filled with people torn apart, cars burning, live power lines down. To the victims, who were actors, it all looked very real. First responders were met head-on by a worst-case scenario.
Be advised, there are readings indicating a radiological release.
In the scenario, a crude mix of TNT and radioactive material known as a dirty bomb exploded. Radiation and fear were spreading quickly. The first challenge for hospitals to decontaminate more than 100 victims.
We'll see explosion-type injuries. We'll see burns. We've already seen a patient who's been complaining of chest pain, who's having a heart attack just from being at the scene.
Police, firefighters, the FBI, state officials, and the Department of Homeland Security are all practicing as if it was a real attack. Immediately, there were 2 key concerns beyond the blast zone: wind direction and underground water, which might carry radiation to more populated areas that may eventually have to be evacuated. Only the planners knew exactly what would happen and when.
There are enough situations that'll be thrown in that it'll really test us.
Officials here have been in constant contact with Washington, where the response is being coordinated and studied.
Well, I think that we're going to learn a lot, but I think other cities are going to be able to learn from this as well.
But the lessons learned here will not be made public out of fear that terrorists could use this drill as a blueprint for the real thing. So far here today, the simulated casualties, Peter, number at more than 100.
Thanks, Neil. Neil Karlinski in Seattle. This drill, as I said, throughout the country will go on until Thursday, and then the teams participating will be judged on how they did. Though, as Neil points out, it won't be public. There are, by almost universal agreement, significant, widespread problems which need to be resolved. ABC's Pierre Thomas reports from Washington that previous catastrophes here have made several problems very clear.
During the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, police could not talk to fire and rescue teams on the radio. To communicate, emergency personnel used couriers. It was the same on 9/11. Firefighters' radios failed in the World Trade Center. Many firefighters never got the word to evacuate the North Tower before it collapsed.
Communication is key in almost any emergency scenario, and our state and local officials, in some cases federal agencies, are not well equipped.
There are serious questions about the ability of any city to respond to a biological attack.
If it's a biological attack like anthrax, most cities can deal with it because not too many people will be affected. But if it's a contagious disease, say smallpox, there's no city in the country that has a plan to be able to quarantine hundreds, perhaps thousands of patients.
Many cities say they still need more money to buy equipment and to train enough people.
We have to continue to build this national strategy so that we actually make some decisions about what has to be purchased and what kind of monies are needed and how you get that money into the states, into the locals.
Here at this National Command Center, the goal during an exercise of this magnitude is to identify the problems before the next crisis.
Our primary goal of this drill is to test communications and the chain of command.
But above all things, we need to know who's in charge and who's prepared to respond at any given function so that we don't end up fighting each other while we're trying to respond and save lives.
20 months after 9/11, a central question for many communities is how ready are they? Pierre Thomas, ABC News, Washington.
Now we're going to go back to the Pentagon to begin our coverage on Iraq. The U.S. has two more members of the former Iraqi regime in custody. One, on the left there, was the chief of staff of the Iraqi Armed Forces. The other is a scientist who was better known by her nickname than by her own name. Once again, ABC's John McCarthy. John.
Peter, one of these people surrendered only after negotiating for about a week, and one was simply captured over the weekend. Ibrahim al-Sattar was a top general in both the regular army and earlier the Republican Guard, and he was well connected.
Someone so high up the ladder of influence would certainly have been aware in the final days of whether Saddam Hussein was alive or not.
Far better known is Rehab Taha, nicknamed Dr. Germ. She admits to helping create Iraq's biological warfare program more than a decade ago. Before the war, in an interview with Diane Sawyer, Taha led Iraq's campaign to convince the world that the program had been destroyed.
In 1991, we destruct everything, all agents, all weapons, and nothing left.
Intelligence sources say she could be very helpful in understanding what happened to the program and the weapons. The U.S. has now found what sources say is a second mobile biological laboratory, nearly identical to the one discovered last month, but still no definitive proof they were ever used to make deadly agent.
It is beginning to worry the administration and indeed the U.S. Army that they can't find a smoking gun.
These weapons are, of course, the primary reason that the administration argued that war was urgently needed against Iraq. It is not yet clear whether the whether intelligence was bad in this particular case, whether the Iraqis managed to hide these weapons better than expected, or, and this is one the administration is not willing to acknowledge, there are no weapons at all. Peter?
Thanks, John. John McCarthy at the Pentagon. It was, by the way, Dr. Taha who negotiated her surrender to U.S. officials. The new U.S. civil administrator for Iraq, Paul Bremer, arrived in Baghdad today to take over the running of the country. He replaces the former General Jay Garner. The Bush administration is changing the senior staff in Iraq at a time when the U.S. has been quite widely criticized for not doing as well with reconstruction as it did with the war. Iraqi expectations are very high, and a senior official in the administration acknowledges that it is not an acceptable situation and needs fixing now. In southern Iraq today, one of the most prominent religious leaders in the country is making a triumphal return to his homeland after 20 years in exile. Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim is another senior Iraqi the U.S. is going to have to contend with, and he wants Americans to leave. ABC's David Wright reports from Najaf.
Thousands of Shiite Muslims lined the streets, craning for a glimpse of the leader who had been gone so long. Ayatollah Hakim fled to Iran in 1980. If he had stayed in Iraq, Saddam Hussein would have executed him. Today, as Hakim surveyed the crowd gathered at the shrine of Ali, the tomb of the Shiite founder, he wept. Although Hakim is now protected by American bodyguards, he has made no secret of his desire for U.S. troops to leave Iraq. The Americans and the British helped Saddam till his last breath to kill us, he told the crowd today, referring bitterly to U.S. encouragement but lack of support in the failed 1991 uprising. Ayatollah Hakim is a religious leader, but his return from exile has had all the markings of a whistle-stop tour. In fact, he's one of several clerics vying to lead the Shiites. Hakim wants a government based on Islamic law, but that would also respect other religious groups. He says women would play a full role in society, but in Najaf today, all women, even Westerners, were required to cover themselves. Today, Hakim vowed not to take up arms to achieve those objectives. Instead, he pledged to pursue the path of democracy.
If there is democracy, correct democracy, we will succeed.
While it's not clear how many Shiites will follow Hakim, he is clearly a force to be reckoned with, even though his vision of regime change is not what the U.S. had in mind. David Wright, ABC News, Najaf.
The two other items overseas tonight in the overseas briefing. There's been a suicide attack today in Chechnya. Officials say that a truck filled with explosives rammed into a Russian government compound. At least 35 people died, over 100 others were wounded. The Russian government blamed Chechen rebels who've been waging a violent campaign for independence from Russia. In the Middle East, Israel today imposed the tightest restrictions in years on the Palestinian Gaza Strip. Just after the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, left the country, no one other than those on humanitarian missions are allowed in or out of the territory. When we come back this evening, the states forced to raise taxes as the federal government cuts taxes. In the face of falling tax revenue tonight, the city in crisis, a closer look at very painful decisions.
Each one of us is only a heart attack away from needing an emergency room or a drunk driver away from needing a trauma center.
And at the end of the broadcast tonight, nature's disappearing act. Underwater creatures who are masters of disguise.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Aleve.
So what did the doctor say?
He said the reason that I'm having trouble getting around is pain from arthritis.
Really?
He said to get moving again, I should take Aleve.
But we usually take Tylenol.
I know, but the doctor said that nothing is better than Aleve.
Doctors know Aleve can stop pain all day with fewer pills. And Aleve works right at the site of arthritis.
So how's the Aleve working?
Like a charm.
Aleve. And for all-day relief of your sinus pressure and pain, try Aleve Sinus and Headache.
Don't we need broccoli? I think I need a haircut.
Kids who can't wait to go on everyday errands?
How are we on gas?
Here's why. Bank One introduces Disney's Visa Credit Card. The new way to turn your everyday spending into magical Disney rewards. Disney's new Visa Card.
You don't know what I had to do to get here.
Only from Bank One.
First day on the job, huh? Right behind you. I envy you, kid. You're going to be building the best cars Buick has ever built. So be proud, be precise, and treat it like the craft it is. Any questions?
The truth, this place is haunted.
Quality is alive and well at a car company called Buick.
It started on Bartlett Street in Brooklyn 154 years ago, an original American company. And today, Pfizer is still discovering and developing new medicines. Pfizer was there in World War II with a breakthrough in penicillin production when no one else could make enough penicillin for our soldiers. Today, Pfizer still leads the way in antibiotics, and new Pfizer medicines treat diabetes, manage depression, and ease arthritis pain.
Now, Pfizer's meeting another great challenge, helping people in need get the medicines they need. Programs like the Pfizer for Living Share Card can help seniors in need get a Pfizer prescription for only $15 a month. And where do many of these medicines come from? Right here on Bartlett Street, where Pfizer started over 150 years ago.
Meeting humanity's greatest challenges. That's the heritage of an original American company called Pfizer.
The Congressional Budget Office said today that the federal government's deficit this fiscal year will be the highest ever, more than $300 billion. Analysts from the office say that higher military spending and lower tax revenues have contributed to the increase. These numbers are certainly going to play into the debate between the Bush administration and the Congress about the tax cut that President Bush is proposing. ABC's Terry Moran joins us tonight from the White House.
As he travels through the heartland promoting his tax cut, President Bush argues it will stimulate the sagging economy by putting money in the pockets of ordinary Americans.
We're not talking about theory. We're not talking about numbers. We're talking about what the tax relief plan does to help our citizens survive these difficult period of time.
Mr. Bush wants at least $550 billion in cuts focused on families with children, small businesses, and investors, who he argues will spur growth with their tax savings.
But with state budgets across the country awash in red ink, many Americans could experience a kind of tax whiplash in the coming years, getting a small tax cut from the federal government and a big tax hike from the states.
31 states have either raised or are considering raising state taxes. Among them, Arkansas has raised income taxes and cigarette taxes. Idaho has raised its sales tax. And California, facing an $8 billion budget shortfall, is considering sharp raises in both income taxes and sales taxes.
When states are forced to raise their taxes, that also reduces the money available for spending in the economy. So those effects are in exactly the wrong direction if what you want to do is stimulate the economy right now.
The Bush administration argues that states don't have to raise taxes. They should cut spending instead. But either way, economists say the budget crisis in the states will be a drag on the economy for a long time. Terry Moran, ABC News, the White House.
When we come back, a city in crisis, another city in crisis, doing without because there isn't the money.
Winning a gold medal in any field makes a bold statement. That's why we're proud to announce that Smart Balance Buttery Spreads have been judged the best tasting in the soft vegetable spread category by the American Tasting Institute. Smart Balance helps to improve the ratio of good to bad cholesterol with no trans fatty acids and no hydrogenated oil. It has the right balance of fats you want in your diet. Use Smart Balance Buttery Spreads, the sensational taste for healthy eating.
Red Lobster has a new, juicy, tender-aged Angus sirloin, paired with our very own delicious shrimp. It's the best of both worlds. Now just $13.99 for a limited time at Red Lobster.
Post-shredded wheat is rich in whole grains and can help reduce your risk of heart disease. So it sounds as good to your ears as it does to your taste buds.
How do you invest to help secure your retirement? You start with your dreams and Edward Jones.
My life, my world, it all begins with a dream.
Edward Jones.
A few years ago, I get this pain. It's no big whoop, just a little heartburn. Yeah, a burning, piercing fireball right here. So I cut down on the foods that bother me. I changed my diet. I worked out. Even my mom tries to help.
Son, try sleeping on an incline.
So I slipped some 2x4s under my bed. Oh yeah, my wife really loved that one. Then I started drinking that chalky stuff, popping acid reducers, and it all helped, but the pain keeps coming back 2-3 days a week. Okay, finally visit my doctor. He says it's acid reflux disease and prescribes Prevacid to help prevent the acid and heal the damage. So I take it like he says, and guess what? It really helps stop the acid pain. How's that for a happy ending?
Prescription Prevacid actually helps prevent acid where it starts by turning off many of the pumps that produce it. Prevacid has a low occurrence of side effects such as diarrhea, abdominal pain, and nausea. Other serious stomach conditions may still exist. Ask your doctor for more information and if Prevacid is right for you. Help prevent the acid with Prevacid.
For the best protection against water damage, one name says it all. Thompson's Water Seal, Wood Protector Plus Waterproofer for the highest level of water protection guaranteed. Thompson's Water Seal and New Advance, the most powerful protection against water damage.
Tomorrow, they are some of the most magnificent creatures on Earth, and armed gangs of poachers are trying to kill them. Find out why and if they can be saved on World News Tonight.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at another city in crisis. We do this periodically, as you know, cities large and small. Los Angeles is the second largest city in the country. New York is number one. They are both struggling with serious deficits. We've covered New York. Now to Los Angeles, where they are trying very hard to keep basic facilities, including hospitals and fire departments, from closing. Here's ABC's Judy Muller.
Los Angeles is getting pummeled by economic woes beyond its control. Like so many Western cities, vital services are provided by the county, and L.A. County is $800 million in the red.
The bleeding has to stop. I cannot take another hit in the fiscal year 04-05.
The county sheriff's department, which provides support for the city's police, has cut 900 deputies and closed 2 jails. The LAPD is already suffering from its own manpower shortage, with an immediate need to hire more officers.
My priority is to make our city the safest big city in America.
The only way to pay for those officers is to raise fees for residential garbage collection to $10 a month. And while that's not expected to entirely solve the problem, at least the city has that option. Not so the county.
And we are at the bottom of the food chain. We have nowhere to turn. We can't even raise taxes if we wanted to, because constitutionally counties are precluded from doing that.
And so the county's only option is to cut back vital services the city depends on. Hospital facilities may be closed.
Each one of us is only a heart attack away from needing an emergency room or a drunk driver away from needing a trauma center.
Also on the chopping block, services for the homeless and abused children, firefighters, and lifeguards who routinely pull people to safety at LA's popular beaches.
I'd cut back on something else. Instead of lifeguards, something that, like someone who would save your life, I wouldn't cut back on that.
But the financial squeeze is only going to get worse. The state of California, hard hit by the dot-com collapse and an energy crisis, has a budget deficit of more than $30 billion. When the state finally passes its budget, more drastic cuts are expected, especially in education. In LA, that will mean more students in each class, less training for teachers, and cuts in every program.
We're trying to protect the classroom, but let me tell you, it is a very, very difficult time, and California doesn't fund its schools very highly anyway.
No matter where they live in Los Angeles, residents will feel the impact, and those who rely on critical services may have to learn to fend for themselves. Judy Muller, ABC News, Los Angeles.
When we come back this evening, our final report in the broadcast, The Secrets of Survival, the Great Underwater Disappearing Act.
Mom, you're just like everyone else. Give or take a few extra arms. The standard issue eyes in the back of your head. And of course, you also have a keen sense of what your child needs. Great tasting, 100% pure Minute Maid premium orange juice. Now with calcium and vitamin D. Who knows better than a mother? Who knows better than For moms who know, it's Minute Maid.
When Manny and Aaron decided to start their own business, someone was there to guide them through a commercial lease. While Manny hammered out their business plan, someone else was negotiating TI allowances. As Aaron tested their new prototype, someone else was finalizing a triple net lease. And while Manny and Aaron prepared to get down to business, someone else closed the deal. Work with someone who worked with you. We're realtors. Real estate is our life.
There are some who live for caring with all they have to give. There are some who will always be there. They dare to care, they dare to cry, they dare to feel, they dare to try. There are some who have the courage courage to care. There are some
Be a nurse.
who dare to care.
A message of caring from Johnson & Johnson.
In national taste tests, more families preferred the taste of Casey Masterpiece Original Barbecue Sauce over Kraft Original. So, when given a choice,
Casey Masterpiece has so much more flavor.
Well, this is barbecue sauce.
Casey Masterpiece Barbecue Sauce, when it comes to taste, it's the real winner. And now try new Dippin' Top sauces, great for dipping nuggets or topping burgers.
I'll get this. Getting a really low rate on this card.
Well, I hope it's a low fixed rate, like my Capital One no hassle card.
Low and fixed? So what's going to happen to my rate?
Get the Capital One no hassle card for the nation's lowest fixed rates and no balance transfer fees.
What's in your wallet?
With only 2 blues left,
Open it or we'll take it down.
you'll get more than you expected. With so many surprises,
They're gonna take Connie's baby and they're gonna go through me to do it.
you'll be asking, what will happen next?
Detective Diane Russell.
Kim Delaney returns for an all-new Blue. ABC Tuesday, 10/9 Central. Viewer discretion advised. Finally this evening, in the name of survival, evolution has given many animals the ability to deceive their enemies, and none is more dramatic than the octopus. Rich material for ABC's Robert Krulwich.
After Saddam and his son stole more than $1 billion, there's talk now that he is searching for a cosmetic surgeon to disguise himself. Well, Saddam the dictator might want to meet Saddam the octopus, because some octopuses really know how to disappear, says biologist Roger Hanlon.
This is what octopuses do for a living. They disappear all the time.
For example, Roger saw this bush in shallow Caribbean water, but as he moved closer, now watch the bush. Look at this. It turns into an octopus. It squirts ink and runs. That's good.
This one's one of the best.
We got to see this again. Let's go backwards before it ran away to when the octopus was all puffed up to look big and scary. And now, backwards and in slow motion, watch the eyes. You see how the pigment is changing back to a dark algae and rock color? And the skin, if you look, it's beginning to pucker. It becomes more rock-like. This is deliberate.
So if they see the algae next to them, they can mimic the algae.
Yeah, it's definitely getting lumpier all over, and this is happening. The muscle changes and the color changes. How long in real time?
It takes less than a second to make any of these changes, so they can become a rock in less than a second. It's instantaneous.
Gone. The octopus and its cousin, the cuttlefish, this is a cuttlefish, are simply, says Roger, the planet's masters of disguise. Nobody, watch this cuttlefish, nobody does it better. So if plastic surgeons could figure out what the octopus does, certain people might pay considerable sums of money, especially for a quick change.
I think the octopus can change its appearance as quickly as any animal on Earth. If you could turn that into plastic surgery, it'd be pretty cool.
Indeed. Robert Krulwich, ABC News.
That's our report on World News Tonight. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
Last year, Stephen King and Craig Baxley dared you to stay at Rose Red. Tonight, see how the terror at this house began.
Who did this to her?
A world premiere event.
Me.
The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, ABC tonight at 9/8 Central.
First, fast, accurate. News 2 at 6 starts now.
I have no idea how we got so lucky. I mean, we're just very blessed.
Residents recall how they survived Sunday's terrifying tornadoes. Good evening. 2 F3 tornadoes